Hey everybody, it's Tao at the Forge, and tomorrow is FNM Historic Artisan. So if you don't know what that is it means that you can play any historic deck you want, but the cards in it can only be common or uncommon. So typically what I've done is I've made some decks for FNM and to give you guys some ideas of things you could build. It is a little bit tough to test decks that are built in Historic Artisan because there's no place to actually test them, right? Because there's not really a place in Arena where you can go, like, I guess I could bring it into Historic, but then it wouldn't be Artisan, and there's no way to tell people only to test Artisan. And so then you're just basically doing whatever you think is going to work, right? So these are untested decks, but I think they actually have a good chance of winning. So most of them are based on established archetypes, and I'll let you know about what I think about their overall general power, right? So basically, because it's Historic Artisan, now you can just play any of the Artisan decks that I showed you guys previously with Standard Artisan, and I will put a link in the video description to that. But if you have the historic cards, then I've tried to find ways to use those and include them. So I've come up with 6 different decks for you guys to try out, and I'll show you guys around. And then afterwards, hopefully I'll get a chance to test them out and see how they do. Right? So last time I tested them, I was pretty successful, and hopefully I'll do well this time too. Now, before we begin, I just want to remind you guys to like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment if there's something you like or something you want to see. And I just want to say thank you to all the people who have been subscribing to me so far. Well, I'm almost up to 500, and I really appreciate that. Your support really means a lot to me. All right, so let's go. The first one we have is Enchantress. Okay, so Enchantress basically is trying to get a whole ton of enchantments onto the battlefield, and the ones that we really want to work on are All That Glitters. Okay, because enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact or enchantment you control. Ancestral Mask. Okay, because enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each other enchantment on the battlefield. And then we also want to abuse Seasons of Growth, okay, so that what we can do is get a creature down, and then whenever we put an enchantment on it, we get to draw a card and hopefully keep drawing more cards into more enchantments, and so on and so forth. Right, so the only card that we have that is not an enchantment is Karametra's Blessing, and that's basically to give your creature indestructible, and hexproof and indestructible in case there's like a board wipe or some sort of targeted removal that will just destroy your creature. Alright, so for removal, we've got Sealed Away. So Sealed Away is a 2-mana flash, right, which is nice, and it just exiles a target creature an opponent controls. Mainly, I think people are going to be mostly playing creatures. Right, now for our creatures, we got a Paradise Druid, which can tap for early mana, but also is hexproof. And once we can put Sentinel's Eyes on it, then what we can do is we can have a hexproof creature that has vigilance, so it just never taps. All right. The other ones I have a 2 of Barkhide Troll. Okay, and again, Barkhide Troll is okay because it comes with a +1/+1 counter on it, but you can take that counter off and give it hexproof until the end of turn. Now, it doesn't make it indestructible, but it does make it so your opponent, as long as you leave up 1 mana, your opponent has to use 2 removal spells on it, right, in order to get rid of it. There's not really any other way to put a +1/+1 counter on it in the deck, but still, it's something, and it can dodge some removal. Okay, the other one we have is Jungleborn Pioneer. It's a 3-mana Merfolk Scout. We don't really care about the Pioneer, but what we do care about is the 1/1 blue Merfolk creature token that it creates with it. So what we do is we get it onto the battlefield. It creates this 1/1 blue Merfolk creature token with hexproof, and then what we can do is start stacking enchantments on the hexproof Merfolk. Right, so that's the idea that we want to get behind this. Right, and then on top of that we have Cetacean Training, which just gives us a creature gives a +1/+0, has trample, but also draws a card. Right, so we can just keep drawing. We just want to keep trying to draw into as much stuff as possible. And then after that we have Commanding Presence, and then basically what that is this gives us +2/+2, has First Strike, which is important, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, we just create a 1/1 white human creature, a soldier token. So it's just a nice enchantment to have, but technically this could be anything else. I had one like a one slot in here, so I thought I'd put it in. But technically you could put, another Barkhide Troll or something like that, or, there's a lot of other things you could do. There was actually a card, where is it here? It's in a 3 mana slot. A Crowan something, I believe, that basically you could actually substitute Favorite of Iroaz. And what that does is creates an enchant, or whenever enchantment enters the battlefield, which is all the time for us, Favorite of Iroaz gains double strike until end of turn. So if you can find a way to get this guy through, and you can put a whole bunch of enchantments on him, then you can basically like just deal up to 10 damage. You'll get double strike and just like basically just slaughter your opponent that way. Now the only problem is that creatures like this, they're great, but they can't dodge targeted removal. So removal that says like just destroy target creature, right? If you stack all your enchantments on it, then you're just dead. So it's a little risky to run this, which is why I chose to rather than going with Favorite of Iroaz, is to go with Jungleborn Pioneer, Barkhide Troll, and Paradise Druid. This is all things that can dodge removal. Alright, and that's it for Enchantress. Okay, moving on, we got Elves. So the thing with Elves is they actually have some cool elves that are in Historic that make this a little bit better. Alright, so we are running blue and green, so it's not just straight up green. Our typical shell is going to be like this, Llanowar Elves. Now, I have them in separate because I only have 3 of these cards, and you can't actually use a wild card to create a 4th of it because it's a promo. So yeah, I only have 3 of them, so I have to add a 4th one like this. Alright, and then after that, what we're going to do is just basically fill the whole deck with elves. Okay, so we've got our Llanowar Elves, Elvish Visionaries, basically just enters the battlefield and draws you a card, so it just replaces itself. A Paradise Druid helps you to get more mana, and it has hexproof. Silhana Wayfinder. So this is an interesting one. It's that basically you look at the top 4 cards of your library, you reveal a creature or land card from there, and then you could put it into your hand, right? No, put it on top of your library. So again, you can basically scry your top 4 and then see what you want right out of there. It's okay, but I mean, there's better cards that could be in here, but it's the best one I could find. Imperious Perfect is pretty neat. I always thought this was Imperious Prefect, but it's not. It's Perfect, and it's because it comes from Lorwyn, and Lorwyn's an interesting world where the elves actually judge each other based on their perceived beauty. They judge other creatures even to say like that they only deserve to live if they're beautiful, right? And so if you're perfect, right, then you get to live and you're basically the epitome of the race. But anyways, Imperious Perfect says other elf creatures you control get +1/+1, and then for 1 mana and tap, you can create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. So you can just make more elves, and she also pumps these elves, and she's not legendary, so you can just keep on adding more of them if you can find them. Okay, after that we got Reclamation Stage, which destroys artifacts and enchantments. I think that this could be pretty relevant. We have 4 of Occam Adversary, so basically it makes things a little bit, first of all, it's Death Touch. If your opponent has green, it makes things a little bit cheaper for you to cast, which could be devastating to your opponent. But then also, every time this deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw a card, and it has Death Touch. So if your opponent doesn't want to block it, then, well, then you get to draw a card off of it. Alright, so anyways, after that I got a 2 of Frilled Mystic because we're running blue. I'd potentially remove maybe 2 of these Silhana Wayfinders and put in 2 more Frilled Mystics, just because usually your opponent's not going to be expecting you to have this. And being able to flash in a counter spell that also has a decent body on it is pretty good, right? After that we've got Distant Melody. Now, Distant Melody this is basically why we're running blue, is basically choose a creature type, draw a card for each permanent you control of that type. Right? So you technically should have a ton of elves onto the battlefield, and so you should be able to cast this spell and just get like a crap ton of mana, or not a crap ton of cards, and refill your hand. Right? And especially with cards like Occam Adversary, Elvish Visionary, and stuff like that, you should be able to find it. Okay, and then on top of that we have Lead the Stampede. Lead the Stampede says basically you reveal the top 5 cards of your library, you reveal any number of creature cards from among them and put them into your hand. So again, because we have so many creatures in here, basically everything is a creature, you can basically add like 3 to 5 cards that are going to be probably creatures in your hand. Finally, to close out the game, we've got this 2 Godzilla Primeval Champions, which is Titanoth Rex, right? You can cycle it away if you don't need it or you can't cast it, but then basically what you can do is because you're ramping mana, you should be able to get so much mana because we have Paradise Druid, Elvish Visionary, Llanowar Elves, just all different ways to make mana. We should be able to get up to the 9 mana required for Godzilla Primeval Champion and put down an 11/11 Trampler. I would say probably by turn 5 or 6, right? Like probably by turn 5 you should be able to get this out, right? But still, you don't want to start with like 2 in your hand or anything like that. You're likely to find it because you have so many ways of digging for creatures like this, and being able to put one of these onto the battlefield is just can just be a killer. Again, I would like to do some testing to see just how many I could expect out of this, but I think overall the 2 is probably the right number. But anyways, after that, that's pretty much like the Elves deck that I put together. All right, let's move on. I went along and did our Merfolk deck. So Merfolk deck is basically using a lot of the Merfolk from Ixalan. And so what we have is, let's see, we've got Curious Obsession. Now, Curious Obsession is a great card because basically what you can do is put it onto like a River Sneak or something like that, so it can't be blocked. And whenever another Merfolk enters the battlefield under your control, this gets +1/+1. But you can put a Curious Obsession on it, and then whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw a card. And then you get to keep on just drawing cards off of this. Right? You got Merfolk Trickster, which can tap in a creature an opponent controls and it loses all of its abilities. Has Flash, so again you can use that. Silvergill Adept basically is a great body, but also when it enters the battlefield, it draws a card for you, so it just replaces itself. The only thing is you have to reveal a Merfolk card from your hand, otherwise you have to pay an additional 3. But still, I mean, you're going to have a million Merfolk, so I don't see that as being a problem. We got Merfolk Mistbinder, which is just a Lord, so other Merfolk you get +1/+1. We got Miro Regiray, so another Lord. Merfolk get +1/+1, and whenever you cast a Merfolk spell, you may tap or untap a target permanent. So again, what we can do is use this and basically start tapping down all our opponent's stuff every time. Okay, we got Wizards. So for removal, I might as well get to this, is we got a Wizard's Retort. So it's just a hard counter, but it costs 1 less if you control a wizard. And it just so happens that we do have some wizards here. So let's see, we have Silvergill Adept as a wizard, and Merfolk Trickster is a wizard. So, like sometimes you're going to get it for 2, sometimes you get it for 3, but still, like having a chance of getting it a little bit cheaper is pretty good. And being a hard counter, not just like removal, not just a counter for, not just a creature counter or something like that, is pretty good. Jungleborn Pioneer, we talked about this with the Enchantress deck, just puts in basically 2 bodies, one of them hexproof, is pretty good. And if you have like Mirror Regiray and a Silver Mistbinder, then basically you can get like some 3/3 bodies out of it. Now, I would potentially take out this Jungleborn Pioneer and put in other removal, right? Like maybe there is a 2 mana counter spell. Where is it here? Let's just look it up. Let's see, it is not Essence Scatter, it is the one that is just actually strictly better than Essence Scatter. Let's see, counter target spell. Okay, so there is one where you counter target spell and then you get to put a +1/+1 counter on your opponent, on your own creature. Let's see, where is it here? There it is. I actually just totally didn't even see it. It's Essence Capture. Right, so this one would actually be a decent one to put in. So counter target creature spell. It's basically the same as Essence Scatter. It costs double blue, but that shouldn't be too hard for us to achieve. And then you get to put a +1/+1 counter on one of your creatures, in exchange for also getting rid of one of your opponent's creatures. It's just strictly better than Essence Scatter, especially because I don't think we're going to have trouble getting our double blue out. We got just so many blue lands here. And if you don't have double blue, well then, I guess you could always potentially go with Wizard's Retort or something like that. But the odds of you not having double blue is going to be very low. Alright, anyways, But then let's see. The idea is to try and get down like a river sneak or something early, and then what we can do is, on 3 mana, get like a Curious Obsession out and leave up leave up the something like Essence Capture or something like that, or just start basically pummeling our opponent, drawing cards, and just dealing with it with Wizard's Retorts and stuff like that. Like I said, this might not be a great fit, this Jungleborn Pioneer. Essence Capture might be a better one in there. But it just depends, I guess. Maybe you could do like a 50-50. I would actually just test it out and see how it goes, and see both ways. But, if you don't feel like you have enough control or removal, then, then maybe put that in. But right now it's more of an aggro build. So then after that, we just got some Skilled Gates and Thornwood Falls, basically just to help us manage our mana, right? Like, we don't have too much green, but we do want green. And then Distant Melody again. Distant Melody, like I just talked about with the Elves deck, is that you just choose Merfolk and then just refill your hand, right? So, overall that's going to be a pretty good pick. Once again, I have 22 lands in this one because our curve is fairly low. And yeah, hopefully we can come out really fast with this and just start dealing a lot of damage to our opponent. Alright, so after Merfolk we have Aristocrats, which is basically just punishing our opponent every time one of our creatures either enters the battlefield or dies. Now, this would be really good with Cauldron Familiar and Witch's Oven, but Cauldron Familiar is banned in this format, so we can't use that. Alright, so what are we going to do? We're going to start off with some Death Touch creatures. So Filemire Knight, which is just actually better than... There was another one I was going to put in here, 1 mana, 1/1 with Death Touch. But Filemire Knight can actually draw us a card later on in the game, so that's actually a nice include. Serrated Scorpion. Basically, again, it's a 1/2 for 1, so it's okay. But then when it dials, it deals 2 damage to your opponent. You gain 2 life, which is just the type of punishment that we're looking for. Vampire of the Dire Moon, another Death Toucher with lifelink just to keep us alive. Cast Down is just basically the best removal in the format. Orzhov Enforcer, another 1/2 Death Toucher with Afterlife 1, so it puts another body onto the field, just another thing to kill. So again, these Death Touchers can take down your opponent, but then they can also just make a kind of a mess for your opponent to deal with later. We have 4 of Corpse Knight, so every time another creature, it doesn't say a non-token, just any creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses a life. And so these Afterlife creatures are actually pretty good because not only can they remove one of your opponent's creatures when they swing in, but then also they can die and bring back and come back and have Afterlife and ping down your opponent with Corpse Knight. Okay, following that we've got Cruel Celebrant. So Cruel Celebrant basically is the same thing as every time one of your creature dies, then basically your opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Ministrant of Obligation. Okay, so same thing, just Afterlife really helps. We have Bastion of Remembrance. So again, same thing. Every time one of your creature dies, your opponent loses life, you gain a life. So you can see we just basically want to have a whole ton of little creatures just die, and make it really hard for our opponent to attack us while we're doing all that. Okay, following that, we got an interesting card is Commanding Presence. So Commanding Presence is nice because it gives your creatures +2/+2 and first strike. So what you can do is put it on one of your Death Touchers. So that's Orzhov Enforcer, Vampire of the Dire Moon, and Filemire Knight. And when you do that, because they have first strike, if your opponent blocks with just 1 creature, the first strike will just kill that first creature, and then your creature will get through for regular damage. So they have to double block the creature. And then because it has +2/+2, it's possible you could actually 2-for-1 your opponent, but they may not want that. And it's likely there's a good chance that you could actually just get through and create a 1/1 human creature soldier token, which helps you block, which also then gives you a mana from, or it pings your opponent from Corpse Knight. Cruel Celebrant, later on when it dies, Cruel Celebrant also gains you back a life, and then Bastion of Remembrance also does the same thing. Now, the only thing I would suggest, and I'm not sure how it would work, is that I feel like there's a lot of lands. Like there's 22 lands in here, which it seems right, but if you look at our curve, the curve is very low. So I could potentially take out these 2 Pajuka Bogs and put in a Revenge of Ravens. That would be something I would try out. And I'd have to go and see basically how it looked. Alternately, if you didn't like Revenge of Ravens, Walk the Plank would actually be a pretty good one as well for just some targeted removal. So next up we have Cycling. So what we're going to have here is, now this is essentially just the current standard deck that's in there, except we don't have that Zenith Flare, right? So anyways, we got one of Flourishing Fox. This is going to be our main beater, also a Valiant Rescuer, which is another one of our main guys, and Drannith Stinger. So those three cards are going to just, hopefully punish our opponent. Now, on top of that, if we really need it, we could put out Drannith Healer to gain us some life, but that's not actually like our real game plan. I mean, it's okay in a hurry if you don't have anything else, but really what you want is the Stinger, the Rescuer, or the Flourishing Fox. Then after that, we have all just like 1 or 2 mana cycling cards, and after that, then, like the good thing about them is that they can cycle if we need them to cycle, but if we want, they also have uses. So we can go Footfall Crater to give a creature trample and haste. Mainly just trample is the big one before Flourishing Fox, because Flourishing Fox can get really big, but it doesn't have trample, so it can just be like chump blocked all the time. So if you can give it trample, that really helps. Then afterwards we got Will of the All Hunter. This is it's just okay, but you can give a creature +2/+2 till end of turn, and that could be kind of a surprise to your opponent. And if you don't want, you can just cycle it away as well. Originally, like, I would have put Zenith Flare in here, except Zenith Flare is banned in this format, and so no dice on that one. Alright, and after that we got Go for the Blood. So basically you can get one of your creatures to fight another creature. And it's actually, this is a cool one because, well, you can force your opponent to fight one of your creatures that you don't want. So it's pretty good. Like, if your opponent just has a really good creature on the board that, they're not blocking with it, you can just get rid of it. Or, again, you can cycle it away. Raking Claws, it gives a creature double strike. This could be a finisher, especially if Flourishing Fox has, like, a lot of counters on it. You give it double strike and then, just wreck your opponent. Shredded Sails, is decent as well, so just destroy an artifact, which could be relevant. Also deals 4 damage to target creature with flying, which could be relevant again, but then if you don't need it, you can cycle it away. Coordinated Charge, again, +2/+1, so essentially the same, except this is for all creatures. So if you get a lot of these 1/1 human soldiers with Valiant Rescuer, you can then get a Coordinated Charge, give them all +2/+1, and just swing for a big hit. After that, we've just got Plains and Mountains, but because we're playing in Historic, we can also add Forgotten Cave and Secluded Steppe, and those also have cycling as well. So the lands that we get also can have cycling, which adds to the power of this deck. So once you get enough lands down that you don't really need them anymore, right, then you can just cycle these ones away, and that'll help you, I think. Not only does it help you thin the deck, but it also helps you, just from cycling in general. So it turns like one of these lands into, 2 damage, or into a damage, or into an extra creature, or both. Right, so I think this is going to be a pretty powerful deck, but I could be wrong. We'll have to wait to see how it plays out. Alright, and then the last one that we need to look at is this Life Gain deck. So Life Gain is basically a variant of Soul Sisters. There's just a way, like, basically just trying to find ways to gain life and pump up a Johnny's Pridemate and Bloodthirsty Aerialist. Now, what we're going to have is a 4 of Alseid of Life's Bounty, so it gives us protection. Also has lifelink, so that's pretty good early on. A Soul Warden, so every time a creature enters the battlefield, you gain life. That's your opponent's creatures as well. We have a Danto Vanguard. Now, because we're gaining life, we don't really mind paying life. So paying life for a 3/1 attacker all the time is pretty good, and you can make him indestructible every single time. And you're probably going to gain a ton of life with this deck. So I think it should be okay. We have a Johnny's Pridemate. Just again a 1/1 lifelinker. Daxos, Blessed by the Sun. This one I'm not too sure about. Whenever the creature enters the battlefield or dies, you gain a life, but okay. I actually think that there's another card that I might substitute out of this. A 4 of Revitalize. So Revitalize is just 2 mana, you gain 3 life, which is what we want, but also draw a card. So we can just cycle through our deck faster with this. Seal Away and Cast Down, just some targeted removal. Seal Away is nice because it has Flash, right? And it also gets around indestructible, right? Bloodthirsty Aerialist, again, is like a more expensive flying Ajani's Pride Mate. And then afterwards we have Funeral Rites. Again, you lose 2 life to draw 2 cards, and then you have to mill 2 cards. It doesn't really matter about the mill. And because we're gaining life, it actually doesn't matter about the life gain, the life loss either, right? So I think overall, every time you draw, like, you can draw 2 cards, like, you know, for 2 life is a good deal. Unburial Rites is a nice one because basically you can return a target creature card from your graveyard, not to your hand, but to the battlefield. I was looking for a card to really abuse with this, but I really couldn't find one that would be, you know, totally broken. I thought of whatever, the Gate Colossus or something like that. But the problem is that a Gate Colossus, and you got to find a way to get into your graveyard, and so just finding a way, like, if you end up with it in your hand, it's going to suck. So I decided not to put that in. Instead, what you could use is one of the Unburial Rites to basically flashback creatures that have, you know, that have been destroyed and get them back into the battlefield. And, you know, and then once Unburial Rites is in the graveyard, then you can flash it back again. And so, you know, you can get your creatures back with it. And if you happen to mill it with Funeral Rites, then you can still cast it back. So, I mean, I think it's okay. Now, there is a card that I would potentially replace this Daxos with. Daxos is pretty good, but there is a card here, and let me just look for it. Alright, so let's see, where is it? It is Nyx Fleece Ram. Where are you, Nyx Fleece Ram? There you are. Okay, so Nyx Fleece Ram. So again, at the beginning of your upkeep, you gain 1 life. And the reason why I like this, actually probably more than Daxos, is that, first of all, it's easier to cast. In fact, maybe substitute that out right away. Right, and it's easier to cast, but also gives you a consistent 1 life gain all the time, and it's got a huge butt. So you don't really care that it's a 0/5 because it becomes a good blocker, but because every upkeep you gain 1 life, like Daxos requires a creature to enter the battlefield for you to gain life, but Nyx Fleece Ram just gives you life just for being around. Right, so I actually like this a little better, but I guess could try it out with Daxos as well. It doesn't, also Daxos is legendary, so if you happen to have 2 of them, then it's not as good. So I mean, Nyx Fleece Ram I think might be a better include. So, but if you don't have Nyx Fleece Ram because it is from Theros, then, you know, the original Theros, then you might want to just put in Daxos if that's what you got. So anyways, that's it for the life gain. So that's it for the decks that I'm proposing that you could play to win FNM Artisan Historic. So, you know, give them a try and let me know what you think. You know, I'm interested to know if you have any upgrades or things that you think could be better. Put it into the comments, and, you know, I hopefully will be back with another video showing me playing them and seeing if they're actually any good, or, you know, maybe I'm just, you know, crack on crack. So, anyways, you know, if you do not have access to the historic decks, you can still play the artisan decks that I have previously made in another video, and I'll put the link again in the description of the video. Good luck tomorrow, and thanks for watching.